stuff too. I got this fine tip marker. I can't find my other one, but this is blue, so I think it'll show up. This is how I lay out balusters on a deck. Two posts here. Everything's going to be backwards in the video. You guys can understand. So the natural way to do it to save material would be to leave a 4-inch gap here between the post and a 4-inch gap on this side. You don't want to add a baluster for where you got the post is the edge of it, so you don't need one. I've seen some people slam a baluster there. That's a waste of $4. So, and plus, I don't think it really looks good having those tight like that. But anyway, if I want to leave a gap here, and I want to leave a gap here, the way I'm going to lay this out is I'm going to, the way I imagine it is I say baluster gap, all the way down to where I get to this end. I have baluster and then my last gap. And how I would do that is I would add to this measurement here, the entire opening, I would add the width of one unit. So one baluster is, say, 1.25 inches. So 1.25 plus, let's call this, I don't know, 57 inches. So we got 58.25 between in the clear. And then we added an imaginary baluster on this side. So we know that by code you can't have less than 4 inches. And we know that a baluster is 1.25 approximately. I'm just using 1.25. So that's 5.25. 5.25. So out of 58 and so we divide that up and see what that gives us for the number of layouts that we need. This phone just died. Lord Almighty. I don't want to start over. I'm not going to do that math. I'm not going to divide that out by hand. I could do it, but it'll just get too long. I'm gonna plug this phone in, this other one that I got here. I'm gonna let that charge up and turn on. And in the meantime, I'll explain what I do while that's happening. And then hopefully I get to show you the math after. All right, so I would divide that number in and it would give me a certain amount. Let's see if I can estimate. So 558. Let's just say it would be maybe 12 layouts. All right. The number it would give me is probably going to be like 12.327, whatever it is. It's going to be a decimal. So we would want to, you always need to round this up because if you round it down, you're having less balusters and that's going to make your gap, your 4-inch gap is going to be too big. So you won't meet the requirements. So you're always going to want to add another one. So we go that in that case, we go with 13. And then we're going to redivide this number out by this 13. And then what that gives us, it's going to be smaller than our original number. So instead of 5.25, it would be like 5.19 or something like that. And that's going to give us our baluster and then a gap that's a little smaller than 4 inches. And that little amount is what it's doing is distributing that spacing in between each baluster so that when you get on this side, whatever your your decimal was for, I think it was like 12 point whatever. It eliminates that little extra and puts it in between the other ones. Now the way you gotta lay it out, let me see if this thing will come on and give me something. The way you gotta lay it out is you got your top plate. I don't know what you call them, an official decking. Maybe you guys will let me know. When I'll take the post out and it'll just be your board, right? You're not gonna put it in place to lay it out. Probably you'll lay it out on the deck, and when you hook you're gonna burn. This is very important. Your one baluster thickness or width or whatever, you're gonna burn that, and then you'll lay out your first, because this is just gap here. This first, remember your first one is just gonna be a gap, your post and then the gap. So that layout is there, and then set ahead because you got baluster, gap, baluster, and then on down the line. Now, let me bear with me. I'll see if I can actually do the math for you here. I know you can't see the calculator because it just makes a big bright spot. I'll let that start up, and then so. But the way I do these, I know I've seen a lot of people do gauge blocks and things like that. You could probably cut that gauge block to that width, but you're going to get that cumulative error in the end. We got pencil thicknesses and all kind of different things to contend with. So if you keep this tape in position and you come back and check it and make sure you're still on your 5.19. And when I say 0.19, you could figure that math. You multiply 0.19 by 16, and that's going to give you the 16th in a decimal. So you could round up or down however you want to do it. Or you could go by eighths if you want to multiply by 8. That's going to give you to the nearest eighths. I got my calculator going. So let's just do it. So we got 58.25 divided by 5.25. That gives, dang, I was close, 11.9. So you always want to add. Now that's a very insignificant number. We could probably just go with 11. That's not going to show up. That it's whoever's measuring that gap is not going to detect that. So let's just go with 11. So we're going to redivide 58.25 divided by 11, and that's going to give us 5.29. 5.29. Now keep in the calculator, but I just put it up here just to kind of show you what that number is. This is that. This is the baluster and the gap, and here's the next baluster. So it's going to be this whole distance. You don't really need to get exactly where the baluster lands on the opposite side, because as long as you're right on this edge, it's going to fall where it does. So we got that number in our calculator. Now I have the whole decimal in there, and you're just going to add it. Mention me. Um, so you could copy the number just to make sure that you don't lose it, hit the wrong button or something like that. But what I do is, so I have my first layout, then I multiply by 2. Now don't hit equals, because it's going to show you the layout. You can write these down. It might be easier to write them down and then do it because you're trying to hold the calculator and the tape measure. Or if you got somebody there doing it, just have them do, whatever. But back out of the 2, back out, and then hit 3. And now so you're only hitting 2 buttons. You're hitting back and you're hitting the next number. Now I got 15.88. Lay that out. Back out 4. 21.18. Now you can eyeball these the decimals, we know that's less than a quarter, maybe 3/16. But it's not going to matter if you're a little off because it's not going to shift you further down the line. As long as you're staying with the tape, you might bounce back and forth an 8 ball or 16th or whatever, but it's always going to get you back on track when you get to the next layout point. So 26.47 on down the line. Now let's go, let's say 11. So now we're back to 58.250001. I can't tell you why the calculator decides to add that one in there. Sometimes you'll be shy like a millionth. It'll be give you nines all the way off the calculator. So who knows where it ends up? But these don't like to be that precise. But that's enough of a layout point that it's not it's insignificant. So there it is. If you have to do anything else, say you have to have balusters tight here on each side, it's kind of the same understanding. You're just gonna keep your spacing, your interval, so you'll have a baluster, which you won't have to invent one. You'll actually have one there, and then you get on to the other side, and you'll have one. You have a gap, then you have a baluster. So when you take your whole measurement, just subtract one unit, and you'll have the gap, and then you'll have that little space left over to put your baluster in. You could have a situation where this side you want a baluster, and on the other side you don't. Um, that's easy enough. You just that you don't have to do any kind of subtracting, or you just lay it out the same way. If you're going the other way, it's you just doing the gap first, and then the baluster will be on the opposite end. So we had the math. I showed you guys the math. You just got to remember, you've got to burn that little bit of distance when you're laying it out because you did calculate for that full length with the imaginary baluster if it was there. Now, if you find a way to kind of stick one there, tack it there, and then you could hook your tape to it, that might be a little more convenient to do. It's a good method. It's real easy once you get used to pressing all the buttons and everything. I got this tape measure. This tape measure is in tenths, so it's in inches, but it's tenths of an inch. So it's just a little less confusing. You don't have to guess what the layouts are because if you have a decimal, say 0.38, you go to 3 there, and then you can guess what the 8 is. But it makes it a little faster because you don't have to think about all those. You don't have to convert anything. It's really simple. You have to look for these. It's kind of a special order thing. You can't really find these in the stores, and you have to kind of search for it because they'll give you engineering tapes, which aren't the same thing. I'll probably never be able to find another tape like this again, but it's a good tool to have. I only use it I don't use it for regular construction because once it wears out, it's hard to find another one.